All right, now here comes the difficult part. And I want you to get your full concentration here because I think you got the grip out of what I have said in the morning. This was easy concepts. Now there are like 3 more concepts to go, and these 3 more concepts are crucial in understanding of orthodontic tooth movement. The first one is what you call the center of rotation. And the center of rotation is a different thing than the center of resistance. So first, center of rotation is not the center of resistance. There is a definition for the center of rotation, which is the point about which a body appears to have rotated as determined from its initial and final position. You know what does this mean? That we will try to look upon the tooth as a free body and try to see from the initial to the final, where did this tooth rotate about? Which means that that center of rotation can be a changed point, because a tooth can rotate around its tip of the crown, it can rotate around its apex of the root, it can rotate in the mid-root, yeah? So you have different points of center of rotation, but you have a fixed center of resistance, all right? So the center of rotation, you know where is the center of rotation when you draw the tooth initially, and when you draw the tooth after being moved under force, then you would see where is the point about which these tooth rotated. So the center of rotation, the point about which the tooth rotates, dictates the type of the tooth movement. And we have 4 major tooth movement. One is called root movement, which is the torque. One is called control tipping. One is called uncontrolled tipping. And one is called bodily movement or translation. And I'm going to leave this in front of you for 2 minutes because I want each one of you to do on the chat to try to write down where is the center of resistance, where is the center of rotation, where is the center of rotation in each of these tooth movements. What is the red dot and what's the black dot? So in these 4 drawings, you would see that the black dot is not moving anywhere. It is the same in the 4 drawings, yes? So what do you think is that? This is the center of resistance, because I told you that the center of resistance does not change. Yeah, it's a fixed point. So the red dot is actually the center of rotation. Yeah, and it is the point that you would find the tooth have rotated from the initial to the final stages. And you have 4 root movements, tooth movements: torque, control tipping, uncontrolled tipping, and translation. Great. So Hayat is telling me that in uncontrolled tipping, the center of rotation is near the center of resistance. That's great. That is great. It is at the tip of the crown that center of rotation is changed according to what? Yes, I'm going to explain that, May, giving you a hint that there is something called center of rotation that is different than the center of resistance, that it is changeable according to what type of tooth movement you want to achieve. Translation, there is no rotation occurring. Great. So I'm going to get back to the presentation because I think now you got the idea about center of rotation. Just want to give you a hint. In the only tooth movement in which the crown moves in opposite direction to the root is the uncontrolled tipping. Can you see that? This is the only tooth movement in which the crown moves in the direction of the force while the root moves in the opposite direction of the force. Can you see that? So actually the tooth rotates near the center of resistance. But in the other 3 movements, root movement, control tipping, and translation, you don't see that. In root movement, the tip of the crown is fixed, but the root moves. In control tipping, the apex is fixed, yeah, but the crown moves. While in translation, both the crown and the root apex moves linearly by the same distance, yeah. So in root movement, you get root movement. Torque, you get root movement. In control tipping, you get only crown movement. And in translation, you get both crown and root in the same direction. Yep, good, good. Now this is an important slide, very important slide. I want you to do full concentration here. The type of the tooth movement is dictated by the center of rotation. Yes, as we have shown. So you get root movement, you get control tipping, uncontrolled tipping, and translation. So where is the position of the center of rotation in translation? Because there is no rotation in bodily movement. Yes, do you see any rotation in the bodily movement? Because there is no rotation in in the bodily movement or in the translation, the center of rotation is at infinity. There is no center. You cannot locate the center of rotation. All right, that is good. All right. So before I go from here, I would like to state another thing about tooth movement. So there are two types now of tooth movement, depending on whether you're applying forces through the center of resistance, getting translation, or you're applying forces away from center resistance, getting translation plus rotation. So tooth movements have names. In translation here, you can get either labialization, lingualization, mesialization, distalization, extrusion, intrusion, So these are the translatory movements that happens as a resultant of force. On the other side, there are tooth movements that happen as a resultant of moment. And these tooth movements can either be buccal tipping, lingual tipping, mesial tipping, distal tipping. So these are ones that result from moment. On the occlusal view, you can have a mesial in distal out rotation or a distal out mesial in rotation. Some people would like to name them clockwise rotation and counterclockwise rotation of the tooth, but I find that these clockwise and counterclockwise rotation more agreeable to be used when we speak about occlusal planes and things like that. So I prefer to use the mesial in distal in rotations as a resultant of the moment. So when we try to say what would be the tooth movement, if you're applying a force away from center of resistance, if you're doing so, you get a translation plus rotation. The translation can be expressed likewise: intrusion, extrusion, labialization, lingualization, mesialization, distalization. And the moment or the rotational tendency of the force can be expressed as buccal tip, lingual tip, mesial tip, distal tip, or in rotation, mesial in, distal out, mesial in. Are you clear on that? So I'm going to give you like 3 minutes how to locate the center of resistance. Will you mention it in the upcoming part? Yes, I'm going to mention that when we speak about the moment to force ratio. I'm going to give you clinical examples as well. This is like the fun part. Okay, the difference between intermittent and interrupted force. Interrupted force is when you put a fixed appliance like the Hyrax. So the Hyrax is fixed, yes? But when you open the screw, now you are putting like 1,000 grams of force instantly. And this force is going to decline to zero with time. Then you do another activation and it's going to have 1,000 grams, then decline to zero and so on. So interrupted force are forces driven from fixed appliances inside the patient's mouth, but they decline to zero. If you use a stainless steel wire during alignment, leveling and alignment, if you do likewise, it is not like the night eye wire. The force is going to be 500 grams at the start. Then after 1 week, you're going to lose all forces, going to decline to zero. So these are interrupted. The intermittent are forces coming from removable appliances, an appliance that the patient can remove from his mouth, like a vacuum foam retainer, not the vacuum, like a active Holy retainer, like elastics, like extraoral appliances. So these appliances will place force once they are placed inside the patient's mouth. But once removed, and this is removed intentionally, not because of the low deflection rates built in them, it's because the patient removed it. So this is an intermittent force. Can we produce pure translation movement in the clinic? Is it applicable? Yes, you can. And I'm going to show you how. You can produce pure translation movement. It's a little bit difficult, but theoretically you can do it. And why is it difficult? Because it is difficult to keep forces as they are throughout the whole visit of the treatment. But you can. I'm going to show you how in the moment to force ratio. Good. Force is characterized by 3 things: magnitude, direction, and speed. No, it's magnitude, direction, and sense. Line of action, magnitude, and direction. Direction is line of action, point of application, and sense. All right.